They erected their ego like an unyielding tower, standing tall, proud, and resolute. Brick by brick, layer by layer, they meticulously constructed it, each brick infused with arrogance, each layer wrapped in the fine silk of their self-importance. At its peak, they placed a crown woven from the illusion of invulnerability. It loomed high above the world, a monument to their delusion, a testament to their self-imposed grandeur. But what they failed to realize was that beneath the gleaming facade, behind the polished exterior, it was all hollow, fragile, and brittle. And you were never meant to be part of their narrative. They mocked you, dismissed you, saw you as insignificant, a mere speck beneath their towering creation. They never considered you a threat, just another inconsequential pawn in the game they so arrogantly believed they controlled. What they never foresaw, what they never even fathomed, was that you were not just a pawn. You were the force that would dismantle their very foundation. You were the tempest they never anticipated, the looming shadow over their kingdom of conceit, the one thing they failed to account for while they basked in their delusion of invincibility. The truth is, no tower, no matter how high it soars, is stronger than the foundation upon which it rests. And their foundation? It was nothing but a web of lies, falsehoods they whispered to themselves, fragile fabrications designed to shield them from reality. Beneath their influence, behind their masquerade of dominance, they were weak, brittle, and vulnerable, and all it would take was a single crack, a single dose of unfiltered truth to send it all crashing down. You weren't here to plead for acceptance. You weren't here to bow before their counterfeit magnificence. You were here to dismantle the illusion, to unveil them as the fools they were. Your power didn't grow in the shadows. You let them witness it in the fire of your gaze, in the silent tension that gripped the air when you entered the room. Words were unnecessary. They saw it, they felt it, and for the first time their world trembled. But they never saw the trap. They never realized that you weren't following their script, weren't abiding by their set rules. While they basked in their mirage of supremacy, you were studying them, observing every flaw, watching them make mistake after mistake, convinced their arrogance would shield them from the inevitable. They built their empire on pride and conceit, but pride, it always demands a price. It's both beautiful and perilous, for it blinds even the mightiest to a fundamental truth. Nothing lasts forever. When you finally made your move, it wasn't a war, it wasn't a battle. It was fate unfolding. It was the reckoning. Your mere presence was the first fracture in their monolith, the whisper that unsettled their foundations, that forced them to confront the reality they had long ignored. It took nothing more than a single misstep, a lone seed of doubt planted in the heart of their self-made kingdom, and from there the cracks spread, weaving through stone like veins, insidious and the fractures deepened, and you stood still, watching it all unfold, never needing to lift a hand. The empire they had built, the illusion they had fiercely protected, was crumbling under its own weight. They had fortified it with arrogance, and you shattered it with their own insecurities. No force was required. You simply allowed them to unravel. And as they did, the satisfaction wasn't in their downfall. No, the true gratification was in knowing you had never feared them. You had never trembled before their illusion of power. You had always known what they were too blind to see, that their tower was nothing more than a house of cards, teetering on the edge of collapse. They had assumed you would stay in the shadows, that they could continue stepping over you, too blinded by their self-importance to notice the storm brewing at their feet. But now they understood. They had always been blind to the real danger. They had always overlooked the inevitable. You had always been there, waiting, watching, ready. Their empire was built on ego, and you, with the weight of reality, had obliterated it. And now they fall. But the real question lingers. What happens when they finally hit the ground? Because falling, that's one thing. But rising after destruction, that's where the true test begins. The thing about ruin is that it never marks the end. It is always the beginning of something new. And as they lie amidst the wreckage of their own making, they are confronted with a question far more terrifying than their initial downfall. What now? That question haunts them, a whisper in the void, an echo in the silence left behind. It is a question sharper than any blade, one that cuts deeper than the fall itself. They once ruled from their fragile throne of delusions, untouchable, unchallenged, but now, amid the debris of their own arrogance, they must face a truth they can no longer deny. They are no longer the masters of their fate. They are merely survivors of their own folly. The worst part of falling from such great heights is not the impact itself. No, the true devastation is in the realization that everything they once believed in, everything they defined themselves by, now lies in ruins. That knowledge festers, a weight in their chests, a phantom that robs them of peace. They cannot run from the wreckage of their pride. They are broken now, and brokenness is not something one can simply patch back together. It is not a mere wound to be bandaged. It is a shattering, a dissolution of identity that seeps deeper than the surface. They may try to mend the cracks, to rebuild their walls, but deep down they know the truth. Nothing can restore what has been lost. Their foundation is gone, ripped from beneath them, and all that remains is the looming question, what now? Destruction is followed by silence, a momentary pause, a breath before the next step. And in that pause, there is only one thing that matters. How do they choose to rise? Will they remain shattered, lost in the shadows of their own demise, or will they confront the truth, transform their pain into something new, something powerful? You have played your role, you have shattered them, but you know this is not the end. The true challenge is not in destruction, it is in resurrection. How they respond, how they claw their way out of the abyss, is the real measure of their fate. Will they attempt to reconstruct their broken tower? Will they cling to the remnants of their pride? Or will they dissolve further, lost in the depths of their own ruin? You did not hand them an easy escape. You offered no pity, no empty sympathies. You granted them only the unrelenting truth of their own downfall, and as they struggle to breathe beneath the weight of their collapse, they realize one thing. They have no one to blame but themselves. But you don't need to tell them, they already know, and that knowledge consumes them. You held up a mirror, and in its reflection they saw the truth, and that truth, it is unbearable. But the game isn't over simply because they are broken. No, the game has just begun. Because there is a peculiar power in being broken, in losing everything. When the illusion is stripped away, when there is nothing left to hide behind, only then does one become truly dangerous. They may think they are finished. They may believe this is their ultimate end, but they are mistaken. Destruction does not erase, it reveals. It burns away the falsehoods, leaving behind only the raw essence of what was always there. And once that truth is laid bare, there is nothing left to hinder the rise that follows. They will either become something greater or fade into irrelevance, buried beneath the ruins of their past. Because when you stand at the precipice, staring into the abyss, you have only two choices. Let the darkness consume you, or rise and become something the world never saw coming. They forged it with their own arrogance and must now summon the strength to rise from it, not as they once were, but as something greater, something fearsome, something unstoppable. But there's a decision to be made, and it is not an easy one, because to rise from the ashes means confronting the brutal truth of what has been lost, what has been left behind. It means coming to terms with the fact that the person they used to be is gone, erased by their own downfall. And that is the hardest part. The fall is not the true challenge. The transformation that follows is. Will they rise, fueled by an unrelenting hunger to forge something even greater? Or will they crumble beneath the weight of their pride, consumed by the very force they once believed made them invincible? Time alone will tell, but one thing is undeniable. Their story is not over. Not yet. Not even close. And as the days pass, as they battle their demons and wrestle with the ghosts of who they once were, one truth will remain unshaken. You were the one who shattered them, and now you stand as the witness to their choice, to wield their brokenness as a weapon or allow it to swallow them whole. What now? The answer is approaching, and it is more perilous than they could ever fathom. You have watched them falter, seen them claw at the fragments of their shattered selves, desperately trying to stitch something familiar together. But here's what they fail to grasp. They do not understand the rules of this game. They fail to see that when the very foundation is fractured, there is no restoring it to its former state. Yes, they can rebuild, but whatever they create will never be what it was before. No patchwork can conceal the cracks in their soul. It is a dangerous delusion they feed themselves, believing they can simply reconstruct what has been obliterated. But you know better. You have seen this cycle unfold before. You have watched countless others attempt to resurrect their empire of arrogance, only to find themselves dragged back into the abyss by the weight of their past. You, however, have always understood the true essence of destruction. You know that destruction is not the end. It is the genesis of something far more formidable. While they scramble to reclaim remnants of who they used to be, you prepare for the inevitable. They have been burned, scarred, and left among the ruins, but they fail to see what those scars truly signify. These wounds are not simply reminders of pain. They are the markings of something far darker, something infinitely more powerful. Because when someone is shattered beyond recognition, they do not simply reassemble the pieces, they set the past ablaze and rise anew. From the destruction, something different emerges, something they could never have anticipated. The darkness entwined with their soul is not their enemy, it is their most lethal weapon. The blood coursing through their veins no longer hums with the same song. Now it sings of rage, of resilience. The energy of destruction is also the energy of creation. They are no longer bound by the chains of who they used to be. The fire has tempered them, sculpted them into something infinitely more dangerous than before. Yet they do not see it. Not yet. They remain ensnared in self-pity, drowning in victimhood. They mistake the wreckage for their downfall rather than recognizing it as their greatest opportunity. And that is where you hold the advantage. Because while they stumble through the remains of their past, grasping at illusions, you understand the truth. You were never the one who needed to rise. You already have. You were never the broken one. You were always the force of destruction itself. And now you watch, waiting, like a predator lurking in the shadows, anticipating the moment they will finally comprehend the magnitude of their fall. They will rise. That much is inevitable. It is their only viable path forward. But the question lingers. Will they rise as warriors, reforged in the inferno of their own failure? Or will they return as hollow remnants of their former selves, clinging to the illusions of an ego that once towered above all? They remain lost in the fog of their own destruction, grasping at fragments of dignity. But here lies the ultimate irony. They will have to destroy themselves once more before they can truly rise. And this time there will be no comfort in the transformation, no sense of triumph in the rebirth. They will emerge empty, stripped of all illusions, and that void, that unbearable emptiness, will either drive them to conquer their demons or consume them entirely. What you did to them was not merely an assault on their ego. No, this was a war on their very identity. You forced them to face the truth of who they truly are. Weak, fragile, afraid. You tore away the mask they clung to, shattered the comforting delusions they fed themselves, and exposed them for the failures they desperately tried to deny. And in doing so, you unleashed the most formidable force of all, the potential for transformation. But transformation is never a gentle process. It is savage, merciless, and unrelenting. They may attempt to reconstruct their fortress, but it will only ever be a feeble shadow of what once stood. And as they stand amidst the ruins, the inescapable truth will dawn upon them. There is no returning to what once was. They can build anew, but they will never again be the same. The past is a graveyard, and buried within it lies every shred of comfort and familiarity they once clung to. That is when the real power begins to stir, the moment they relinquish the futile hope of restoring the past, when they surrender their pride, their shame, and their desperate yearning to reclaim something that was never truly theirs, when they finally grasp that their downfall was not the worst thing that could have happened. It was the catalyst for something far greater. And now what happens next? What will they become in the aftermath of their ruin? They will become dangerous. They will become unpredictable. They will become raw, unrestrained, and more powerful than ever before. Their ego may be obliterated, but what emerges from the ashes is something far more lethal. Because a person with nothing left to lose is a person who will stop at nothing to achieve their vision, and that is when they become truly unstoppable. The strength they seek will not come from restoring what has been destroyed. It will come from embracing the force that shattered them in the first place. The darkness, the agony, the emptiness. They will no longer cower from it. They will harness it. They will wield it, and it will propel them forward with an unrelenting fury. And here's the final twist. They will rise, yes. But what ascends from the ashes will not be the same as what fell. They will emerge darker, more ruthless, more dangerous than before. Their hunger for retribution, their drive to prove themselves, will ignite a fire within them unlike anything they've ever known. They will no longer be shackled by the arrogance that once held them high. Now, they will be propelled by the brutal truth of their suffering. And that truth will fuel them beyond your comprehension. They will never be the same. Not ever. And as they rise, they will remember. They will recall who stripped them of their pride, who unmasked their fragility, who forced them to face their own insignificance. They will remember that it was you who shattered them. And in the end, they will make their choice to wield their brokenness as a weapon or allow it to consume them. But regardless of their decision, you have already won. You have already proven the ultimate truth. It was never about the fall. It was always about the rise. And whether they rise to conquer or sink further into oblivion, one truth remains. They will never forget the one who shattered them. Because in the end, the most formidable force is not the fall itself. It is what comes after. And as they rise from the ashes, one thing is certain. They will never, ever be the same again. And that is the power you have given them, the power of their own destruction.